Calling all partners. Losing weight is better together with Nutrisystem's Partner Plan. In fact, people who diet together lose 20% more weight than dieting on their own. Get new premium meals with up to 30 grams of protein. They're big and filling and taste delicious. Plus, try our new restaurant faves that taste like your favorite restaurant, portioned with half the calories. Don't wait. You could win big cash during Nutrisystem's Better Together Partner Plan $100K giveaway. And maybe win the grand prize of $25,000. Just go to Nutrisystem.com/thin right now and get 50% off plus an extra $50 off your first month. You heard me right. Go to Nutrisystem.com/thin right now and get 50% off plus an extra $50 off. Don't wait. This Partner Plan offer will not last long. Just go to Nutrisystem.com/thin right now and get 50% off plus an extra $50 off. Go to Nutrisystem.com/thin. See website for details on our 2-month subscription offer. No purchase necessary. Open only to U.S. residents over 21. Void where prohibited. Runs December 25 through April 4th, 2022. For official rules, visit Nutrisystem.com. Sponsored by Nutrisystem, Inc.
Plan ahead this Valentine's Day with 1-800-Flowers.com. From first dibs on great deals to the best selection of Valentine's Day roses and guaranteed delivery. Don't wait to wow. Right now, 1-800-Flowers is offering 24 assorted roses for $39.99. Or upgrade to 24 red roses for $10 more. Get right to the romance this Valentine's and find the way to wow with 1-800-Flowers.com. To order, go to 1-800-Flowers.com/tune-in. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/tune-in.
Hello and welcome back to What's Up Doc, the true crime documentary podcast. I am your host, Gemma Delaney, and I am here to tell you what is up. What is up with the latest true crime documentaries. This week's episode, funnily enough, you'll hear in a minute anyway, you'll know what I'm on about. It was one of the first episodes of season 3 that I recorded. It was recorded back in the Christmas breaks. There's a lot of talk of Christmas and New Year's resolutions. And also, for the love of God, please forgive me. The audio quality is absolutely shite because it was one of the first episodes I recorded via Zoom. So whereas normally I would obviously have guests in my little lair in my studio, this was all online and it was a learning curve. And thanks be to Jesus, I've gotten better at it. But yeah, not so hot with the audio quality on this one. Look, hopefully the guest will more than make up for it. On this week's episode, we have broadcaster, TV presenter, radio presenter, comedian, and just all around fucking really sound bloke, Keith Walsh of the Keith Walsh podcast fame. Keith was good enough to come on and listen to my nonsense and shite on about the new Netflix documentary Trial 4 with me. And I hope you enjoy this one.
Keith Walsh, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Gemma. How are you?
I'm good. How'd you get on over Christmas?
I had a fantastic Christmas. Very nice. I enjoy the quiet life, so it suited me.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people were upset not being able to see friends and family. It suited me down to the ground. I had everybody I needed here within the 4 walls of this house. So I was very happy.
I think we even said that during the production meeting, did we? I was saying as well that I'm I won't say notoriously antisocial, but I like my own space. So this lockdown malarkey is suiting me down to the ground.
Yeah, it's not a cool thing to say, but I'm fine. I'm fine to have to stay away.
Maybe it's something that comes with age. I don't know. But yeah, like you said, everyone that you need being in the 4 walls of the house. That's a nice way of putting it, actually.
But it's definitely age because I'd imagine, like, my daughter's 18 and I'd say between the age of 18 and 28, I craved other people and being out.
Be climbing the 4 walls trying to get out. Yeah. And like I was saying to you, I have a 14-year-old daughter, 15 actually, she's just gone 15. But the very same, like, you know, I thought up until this point we didn't have the terrible teen, but we're getting there definitely. She's struggling with lockdown, 100%, and every day it's like, can I go out and see my friends today? And I'm like, nope, we're still in level 5 and we've got 10 million new cases. So, but look, I see there on Instagram, you're doing something exciting. You've been busy anyway. You're cracking on with this 100 days of no booze. But you've been booze free for a while now though, right?
Yeah, a year now. Yeah. I started last year when I did at the end of Christmas, got through Christmas, usual Christmas. And then I was doing a lot of work with RTE. I was covering a lot of radio stuff for the week where everybody's off. So I decided to just work and stop boozing kind of shortly after Christmas, and then decided in my wisdom to do 100 days of no booze, because I saw Ciara Kelly on News Talk does this thing.
That's right. Yeah, I wondered if you'd been inspired by her. All right, yeah.
Yeah, so I said, I wonder what it'd be like to do 100 days of no booze. And I didn't really think how long 100 days was. I was thinking, that'll bring me up to middle of March, maybe Paddy's weekend. That wouldn't be too bad. But it's a lot longer than that. It's 10th of April if you start on the 1st. I'm glad I didn't know how long it was, because I did the 100 days of no booze. And then I just continued and kind of had a couple of weekends where I drank during the whole year. And after those weekends, it sort of made me double down on the fact that I'm not probably ever going to drink again. So about a year of it. And then this year I thought it might be interesting. Other people might be interested in doing it. So I sort of just put it out there. And we have we have a WhatsApp group with about 200 people in it, which is the biggest WhatsApp group.
That's deadly. 200 people. Wow, that's amazing.
It's a lot of people. Yeah. And then we have a separate Instagram page, the No Booze 100 crew. That's what we are. And it's good. It's good.
We're hip to the happening beat. We're down with the kids.
Yeah, just it'd be nice to see, even if one or two people, get through the 100 days.
That's deadly. Yeah. But because I mean, it's very of the moment. I mean, a lot of my friends have gone, boozeless over the last couple of years. My brother and his partner were probably the first that I knew of, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And like that as well, it was a Christmas thing. I don't know if it was a New Year's resolution or what, but come Christmas, they decided to just knock it on the head. And I mean, it's not that they ever drank excessively to begin with, but I suppose just Irish people as a habit, when we do drink, we don't stop at one. You know what I mean? It's not a glass of wine, it's a bottle or whatever. But yeah, there's so many of my friends boozeless. And then, you had a post on Instagram there a couple of weeks ago as well, and you were looking for recommendations for like boozeless drink. And I commented under, we started it about a year ago as well. It wasn't at Christmas time though. It was probably a year. It was only 12 months last summer. And like that as well, I don't know. We just decided we didn't want hangovers anymore, and decided to try the boozeless stuff. And like, there's no difference in the taste. This is what I keep saying to people. Definitely with, some of the beers. The beers I think are probably the better ones, and the no secco as well. The wines, not so much. They're not great. And that's probably why I haven't gone completely teetotal. I do like a glass of wine every now and then. We had some no secco last night. It's nice, isn't it?
Yeah, it's perfect. It's fine.
There's no difference, like, yeah.
And definitely a can of Heineken 00 when you get the crowd.
Yeah,
and it's
lovely. Yeah.
Does it for me every time. So, yeah, I mean, and, again, it could be an age thing, but I think I just want to be more productive. I want to get more stuff done,
Yeah.
And I just have so many hours in the day now, so I can do whatever I want, which is great.
Yeah, I suppose that's what it is. It's getting busier, and like you said, wanting to be more productive and just not being able to justify, wasting a day in bed, dying, or your head in a bucket, vomiting, like after being on the Raz the night before. But,
and I never really got bad hangovers, which was a great excuse to drink. But it was just I would feel very lethargic during the week and not really care about things. It wouldn't be the hangover; it'd be the following week, the sense of doom, the sense of like horror and guilt and the fear that would just last until Thursday, and I just wouldn't get anything done. So, here's to the weekend. Here's to the week. Here's to the rest of the week.
Yeah, I mean that's. I'm assuming then. Well, as you said, you started this last year, but this is kind of your version of a New Year resolution, or have you set yourself any New Year's resolutions this year?
No, nothing really. I'm just keep being as brilliant as I am.
Being the exceptional human being I am.
Yeah. Just keep being perfect. No, I'm still very fascinated by things like therapy and self-improvement.
Yeah.
So just to continue trying to be the best version of myself, I suppose, is one way of putting it.
Yeah. Well, a nice little segue, I think that is, into then true crime and true crime documentaries, because like that's what I always say. I'm big into self-improvement and psychology, and I think both of those things go hand in hand. So I think if you have an interest in psychology and how the mind works and how the brain works, you'll naturally have an interest in true crime as well. Or maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just how it resonates to myself. But when we had our previous meeting, our production meeting, and I asked you, were you a true crime enthusiast? And you were very honest in that. Not really. Like you'd watched a few documentaries on Netflix. But how did you find it when I set you this task?
Yeah, I think I'd said to you that I enjoyed, and my daughters kind of would be more into it. I think it's a young person's game, young people like yourself. But I'd watched The Staircase, and obviously the big ones when they come along, you hear about them, and then you recommend it. And podcasts, true crime podcasts. I like the Aussie one, which I think it was called Teacher's Pet.
That's right. It's really good one, actually. That's
absolutely fascinating. Yeah. And to a lesser degree, Where's George Gibney, the Irish one, which is a brilliant podcast about George Gibney, swimming coach who absconded to America, and it was a bad guy. But yeah, The Staircase, and I didn't really know. Like, I suppose I'm in a phase in my life where if people ask me something, I'm more likely to say yes than no. So I didn't really know exactly what you're asking me, but I was like, okay,
sure, why not?
This person seems to be, interesting, and I didn't really know what I was saying yes to.
And then when you discovered there was 8-hour-long episodes, I'd say you were absolutely cursing me, were you?
There was a moment where I was like, oh, okay, I better watch all this. And but no, I was glad I did. It's funny, and not to get too philosophical, but it's funny in life where if you allow yourself to say yes to things, you'll find yourself somewhere where you didn't expect to be and enjoying yourself. So
absolutely.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you asked, and I enjoyed watching it.
Perfect. Well, look, I'm going to go through the boring bits first of all. So obviously the title, the one we're dealing with today, is Trial 4. What did you think of that as a title, actually? What did, when you first heard the title, I'm assuming you didn't know anything about the case. What kind of images did that awaken in your mind? What do you think it might be?
Trial 4, I thought was, I just thought it was in room 4 in the court.
Mm-hmm.
There was a courthouse and there was 4 rooms, or 30 rooms. It's just in room number 4. So I didn't really get the significance of it, and to sort of not to come across as totally stupid. It was a long time into it where I went, this is the 4th trial. That should have occurred to me a lot sooner.
Well, I'm with you there, to be honest with you. I didn't think it was a great title for the documentary. I didn't really, like that as well. I was into it a while and I was like, okay, that makes sense. But I think to the layman, flicking through Netflix, it's not something that's necessarily going to grab you. And that's a pity, I think, because I thought this was a cracking little documentary, but we'll get into that more.
Well, yeah, I do think just as we'll explain, there was a lot tastier elements to the documentary than the fact that this is the 4th trial.
Yeah.
I do feel like, especially for Irish audiences, there might have been
100%.
An Irish elements that they could have highlighted and made it about that, but they didn't. That's the choice.
Yeah. And as I was saying to you in the production meeting as well, like you said to me that you've seen all the kind of the bigger ones, or the more well-known true crime documentaries like The Staircase, and I said, well, that's really interesting, because the guys who directed this, Remy Burkle and Jean-Xavier de Lestrade, really it'd be Remy Burkle, wouldn't it, and Jean-Xavier de Lestrade, I would assume, or some kind of pronunciation like that. They did The Staircase, and then they did, I don't know if you've heard of it, Sin City Law. That was a big hit at Sundance. But it was funny that you had said you had seen The Staircase and liked it, and here I was giving you a documentary by the very same guys. Did you see any similarities, production quality wise?
Really, nothing struck me. I
thought the openings were very similar in the way that they were constructed. I don't know if you noticed the kind of imagery that was used. So in The Staircase, they used this kind of graphic of a winding staircase, and then they kind of had shots. what's the word I'm looking for? Like black and white kind of a projector. Projector is what I'm trying to think of. Shots. Yes. Blasted onto the screen, and they've done a very similar kind of thing with the opening in here. I did say to you though that I didn't like the music for the opening of this. It reminded me kind of Dropkick Murphys style.
Dropkick Murphys, yeah, it probably was Dropkick Murphys. I didn't get a chance to look into that, but I didn't mind the music so much. I think your man Burkle, is that his name?
Yeah,
he probably pronounces his name Burkle because he's French American. Burkle, but I think he studied graphics. I think that was his kind of thing because he put together the trailer for the pitch to make the documentary. So I think the graphics were probably because he was involved in the staircase as well. So probably coming from his head, I'd say.
Yeah.
He was
determined to get that in. This is what he does.
Didn't strike me the similar. It's probably too long ago since I watched the staircase. So
but also I'm a nerd and this is what I do. So don't worry. This is what I do. But I like. In terms of then, like you said, and I both agreed that we didn't think that the documentary's title really sold it per se or gave a whole lot away. But had you heard of this case before? Like, before I set you the task?
No, I'd never heard of it.
I hadn't either, to be perfectly honest with you. No.
It's weird because of the Irish element that it didn't make headlines over here, or you'd imagine it's not that long ago, and there's a huge Irish element to it. I would have thought I would have heard of it because it's funny because I spoke to you about a different documentary, the Central Park 5, the Park 5.
Central Park 5, a banger,
which I'd heard of that, and so obviously, when I came across that on Netflix, I was drawn to watch it. But I didn't hear anything about this one at all.
No, I never heard about this case either. But like, you'll find, if you ever choose to go back into the true crime genre community again, you'll notice that, I suppose, is that the volume of cases, wrongful convictions, corruption. Again, I don't want to give too much away before getting into the kind of the summary of the doc, but it's so 10 a penny over there that, I'd say the stories don't ever make it outside of America, which is great for us as true crime enthusiasts because it means we have a plethora of cases to dive into and things we've never heard of. And, whereas I guess over here in Ireland, everybody knows everybody. There's that 6 degrees of separation. And, if there's a murder or a killing, it's front page news. It's on the news for the week, it's nearly oversaturated and we find out every element of it. So that's the good thing and the bad thing, I suppose, about the corruption is that it's so prevalent that there's so many cases that we're spoiled for choice. But then on the flip, that is the negative of it as well, that there is so much of it going on over there.
I do think you should watch this and be glad of our justice system because we are very hard on ourselves as a country and our, what we do with the law and how we run the country and all that kind of stuff. And we're very, very lucky to live in this country.
I've said it before on different episodes as well, Keith, that like, no disrespect to our own government, but I mean, trying to be funny about it, I suppose really we just have a bunch of like, farmers trying to run a country. We just don't even have the level of, in terms of finance, corruption, the power they have over there. It's just not even, it's oranges and apples. Like, we're dealing with much smaller fish in a much smaller pond here, as well. So
we're a very small country.
We're a very small country. Yeah.
We're just a little island. we're not that important. We shouldn't worry too much about things.
This is it, exactly. So look, I'm going to crack on with the summary of the documentary then. So interject if I miss anything here or there's anything yet you feel needs to be said. So basically it is about a young black man in Boston, Sean Ellis. He's 19. To give a very rough, I suppose, synopsis of it, he's buying nappies or diapers at Walgreens. There is a police officer shot outside in his car, Detective John Mulligan. It's kind of an executioner style murder, which, to some that would say that's a personal thing, if you're going to get into the psychology of a murder and that kind of thing. And basically, very, very quickly, finger is pointed at this young black man, Sean. And that's the general gist of the story, again, without giving too much away too early in the podcast. It starts off at the end. It starts off, with Sean doing a piece to camera. Actually, the opening shot, I think, is like a pan over the Boston skyline and then like a Boston courtroom. And then it shows Sean doing a piece to camera, talking, that kind of, at the end of it, kind of going, I never thought I'd find myself here. I never thought I'd end up in this situation. And then, his defense lawyer, who you mentioned there earlier, Rosemary Scapicchio. I'm not sure. I always butcher these names. Her talking about the case then as well. Was there anything in the first episode that surprised you or shocked you?
Not really, but like there was. It's funny the way it maybe it was just me, but the way it evolved. There was moments where I actually thought, when you watch it at the start, and you're kind of like, okay, he's definitely, because he's older, he's talking about it, so that would indicate that he's free. It's been solved, and he was innocent. He shouldn't have been locked up. But at the same time, the way it evolved, I was like, oh, maybe he did do it, or because there was his friend who. There was the whole hiding of the guns and the friend and the person who saw him crouching behind the car. And there was moments where I was going, this is going to, I thought it was set up like, to look like this guy was innocent and he got out free. But actually,
that's interesting. That's interesting. Yeah.
But I'm a bit thick when it comes to things like this. I need things spelled out. So I was like, wow, imagine if that they're going to get to a point where actually he did do it. And, the cops were right, because the cops were the white cops, obviously, they were white Irish cops. Mostly,
yeah, I know, for shame.
They were so adamant, right?
And they were you're dead right. They're very convincing in the first episode as well. So you triggered a memory in me that I forgot. I'm with you there. I actually did think that in the first episode. And again, not having any knowledge of this case, because again, I'm going to do the briefest of synopsises now of the first episode. But like I said, Sean, he's introduced as the protagonist, 19 years old. He states from the get-go that he's 22 years incarcerated. We know that. And then Mulligan is this cop who was shot dead. The only thing that I think really alluded to something being amiss, I think anyway, in the first episode, I don't know if you remember, Keith, they said that his nickname, John Mulligan's nickname, was Clearview, because every case that came up against him, any evidence he found was always in Clearview. He never had to go searching for it. So this was a little nickname that he was given by judges, lawyers, and even fellow policemen alike, kind of taking the piss out of,
Yeah, because I presume, because what I read into that was Clearview meant that he didn't have to do any paperwork. He didn't have to prove anything. Everything was just obvious.
Yeah. Conveniently.
Yeah,
and then they said as well that he had, again, I can't remember the exact figures, if not the most arrests, some of the highest arrests in the Boston Police Department as well. And then they do talk of him briefly having a history of wrongdoing. But apart from that, the first episode really went into next it went into his, I don't know again if you remember, his partner Nancy. She was the initial suspect. So that they learned that John Mulligan, after being killed, like I said, executioner style, and that tends to be a person that, that doesn't tend to be like a robbery type killing. That's a person. That's when there's emotion involved. So she was the initial suspect, and she was brought in to be questioned. And the documentary shows, or you can hear the audio of that. And she admits to knowing that he was cheating on her at the time. She was aware of that, but that everything was fine. And they ask her point blank, "Did you kill him?" And she says no. And that's kind of the end of the line of investigation with her, which is strange to begin with. Anyway, I thought.
Yeah, I kind of forgot about that bit.
Yeah, well, it's because, and you'd be forgiven for it, because it's all about, like I said, these episodes are 45 minutes, an hour long. And that's all of about 5 minutes of the first episode. Like, it's just skirted over so quickly. But I guess maybe I'm wrong.
At what point did they bring in the journalist from the Boston? Was she?
I can't think of her name, but it was Blunder. What was it? She did a kind of piece, a weekly piece called Blundering the Basics, wasn't it, or something like that? Yeah. She was really good, and she was young at the time. She was this young, enthusiastic journalist, and she was kind of like, shit, if I'd known, the wrath I was going to incur as a result of this piece, I probably would have shut up and said nothing. But she kind of starts. That's in the first episode as well. Yeah.
So she was onto them. She was saying was it? Yeah, the Boston Globe, I think. But she was saying there was bad things going on within the organization.
Yeah. So it's sowing the seed there, I guess. It's sowing the seed from the get-go that maybe, not as all what it seems. And then kind of midway through the first episode, we become aware of Sean's existence within, they stop talking about the Mulligan murder, and we become aware then of Sean's 2 cousins getting killed 2 days after. And they don't really go into any detail, but other than that the police thought there might be a potential link. I don't know how. They don't really go into it too much. But Sean is called in for questioning, and being the nice guy he is, or at least appears to be at this point in time, he freely admits to being at Walgreens at the time of the murder. And then, his lawyer, Rosemary's like, are they really the actions of a guilty man? Like, would you actually be stupid enough to admit to being at the location of the crime when, you're the prime suspect? You wouldn't. You'd make up an excuse. But somehow the police kind of find this link between the 2 murders, which is, I think, sketchy at best.
Yeah, there was something, and maybe that the documentary, I don't know if that was intentional, but I was a bit confused around that. I was going, what? Yeah. There was so much going on.
I haven't really woken up until I've had my McDonald's breakfast deal. And I know this is true because before breakfast, I put my phone in the refrigerator and couldn't find the keys that were already in my hand.
Nothing gets the morning going like the first sip of an iced coffee. Get any size and any flavor for 99 cents until 11 a.m. Price and participation may vary.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. McDonald's. I'm loving it.
If you love to be remembered as the person who gives the best birthday gifts, I'm here to tell you that 1-800-Flowers.com is your ultimate birthday gifting destination. 1-800-Flowers has thoughtful and artfully created options that are guaranteed to deliver the best birthday surprise. Shop thousands of unique gifts at 1-800-Flowers.com for exclusive offers and great values. To order today, visit 1-800-Flowers.com/tune-in. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/tune-in.
It was his cousins. He was just dragged in, it was a different case that kind of, suddenly he was involved in, it didn't seem to make sense. Nothing seemed to join up. It was confusing. And you're like, okay, hang on a second. And, because it's confusing, you're like, oh, I must have missed a step there. Something must have happened that I didn't see or notice that the cops noticed or something, so maybe that was intentionally confusing, but it was, when you think about it, it was bizarre. And you can see the reasoning behind it as you watch more of it, why they did what they did. But, obviously some guy comes in, not related to, just mentions this shop. It'd be like me saying, I was on my way to help my wife who was, giving birth at home, and I passed by Dunn's, and ran in to get, some wipes on the way, and they go, Dunn's.
It was him.
Yes. Okay. That's the same place that murder happened the other day. Okay, let's go.
It's funny you should say that, actually, because I was reading an interview with the director, Remy Burkle, and they asked him, the last question they asked him in the interview was, what was the message you were trying to get across? And I just thought it was, really blunt, but then I suppose, just he's telling it how it is as well. He said, you just point your finger at a poor black man in Boston to make a problem go away.
Yeah.
That's the point he was trying to get across. So it's, and that's exactly what you're just saying there. Like it was at best, it was so flimsy, this connection between Sean, and it was just because he happened to mention being there buying nappies at the time of the murder, which then kind of further on in the documentary to find out isn't actually the case. He wasn't there at the time at all.
But also, wasn't there a connection between, now I could be wrong here, somebody he knew, a friend of his or a cousin of his, and one of the other cops was in a relationship with her mother or something?
Yeah. No, you're bang on.
Am I too far ahead now?
You're not, to be honest with you, because I think like a lot of episode 1 is, like you said, a little bit confusing, maybe deliberately to show how, the confusion tactics maybe that the Boston Police Department used. Because the way the first episode ends up is that there is a car seen driving away from the crime scene. It's found belonging to this guy, Terry L. Patterson. And then they bring him in for questioning, and he says that Sean was the trigger. That's in his own words.
We should say that he was probably, I always think of Jerry Maguire in the UK, the Guildford 4 or the Birmingham 6. Mm-hmm. He was kind of encouraged to write this confession, wasn't he? Or he was he was like, look, we're going to lock you up. And he went, oh, the best thing for me to do is blame my friend, because if I say he killed him and then I just get accessory or something, and that was his game, wasn't it? Because he thought, well, I'm a black guy. I mean, obviously it was with black people in Boston, they obviously knew, well, I'm not going to get away with this, so I'm just going to try and do the best. So he basically hung his friend out to dry to try and make his situation better. Is that right?
And again, that you're hitting the nail on the head, and that's a really common reoccurring theme I find in true crime documentaries as well. You see this over and over and over again. You see it in the Innocence Files. You see it in you mentioned it earlier there about the Central Park 5 as well.
Central Park 5,
I'm going to go down anyway because I'm black. So it's about getting the lesser charge. It's not, I'm not going to not get a charge,
Because as it works out in the Central Park 5, they get one kid who's particularly, I think I remember in the Central Park 5 is actually that kid's dad who said to him, just admit you did it, point the finger at those guys. You're not going to, and the situation, you're so tired and you've been locked up for so long. You're so confused and you just think someone tells you this is the best thing to do for your situation. And you're sort of, you're made to feel like, but to point the finger at other people, you point the finger at other people, you sign the statement to say, yeah, we were all there. I was there, but he did he bet the girl up, whatever. And for the cops, there's your evidence. You got a signed statement.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's all they want at the end of the day. They don't. And again, this is a recurrent theme. They don't seem to be too interested in the truth. They just want a conviction, really,
Yeah.
So look, moving on then to episode 2, and I'm going to absolutely hammer through these.
I should say at this point, all the telltale signs are all there that this has been done before.
Yeah.
This isn't the first time they've done this before. And if we're talking about this particular case, there's obviously many, many more black people that went to prison that didn't get someone like Scapiccio to represent them, that didn't, weren't as lucky and are probably still locked up to this day for something they didn't do.
And lucky is the operative word there, because like that woman is an absolute beast. I think my favorite bits in the documentary are her in the courtroom, tearing various members of the police force down on the stand. Like she's an absolute animal, she's not one to be reckoned with, definitely. But
no, but if you think when she met Sean, she said to him, "Why you?" So obviously she probably gets letters all the time of black people saying, "I'm innocent, I didn't do this, please help me. I saw you on the TV," because she was kind of she was involved in a famous case. And she made him prove to her that she should, so that was what you're dealing with. So you can just imagine, and this is only Boston, you can just imagine.
Yeah, 100%. But then in episode 2, again, I don't know if you remember, but it was one of my favorite parts of the documentary. They initially start out then, episode 2 was kind of, it's introducing Sean as he was at 19. It kind of gives a brief synopsis. Member of a street gang. He's from a poor, disadvantaged area. He was arrested the day of the cousin's funeral, and he was paraded in front of the cameras. So obviously they tipped off the local media as well. He was paraded in front of the press by the police. and he hadn't even had a chance to speak to a lawyer at this stage. So then when they're talking to, I don't know if you remember initially before Rosemary, he had these two guys whose names completely evade me at the moment, but they said that, you know, he hadn't even had a chance to speak to them yet. And if he had, they would have told him to stand up straight, you know, don't shield your face. You're an innocent man.
He was hiding his head.
Yeah, because he was 19. He was a kid. Like you were saying, you have an 18-year-old daughter at home. Imagine next year she gets, you know, fingered for a crime she didn't commit, like, you know, and doesn't get to speak to you or legal representation. And then she's in front of the media and cameras and on the news before you even know it. Like it's absolutely bonkers when you think of it, when you put it in context of your own life and people you know and love, you know, it's crazy.
But also this guy people are looking at us, they're looking at the telly. The way it's set up is we've got him. Yeah. You've got the guy. Yeah. You're sitting at home in your house watching this, and you go, "Oh, they've got that guy that killed that girl." That's what you go straight. That's you know,
it.
You
don't
worry
about it's a foregone conclusion, and you are the public who are watching that TV. They're going to be the jurors who haven't yet been selected. Do you know what I mean? So you're already been fed that idea that he's guilty. How do you be objective when you've already been told this is the guy? You know what I mean?
Because obviously straight away you're trying to find reasons why he's not guilty rather than trying to find reasons why he's guilty, you know?
Yeah. But it then jumps back to, and again, you mentioned her in the previous, when we were talking about the episode 1 there, that the journalist for the Boston Globe, whose name we can't think of, I can't remember for the life of me. Began with a T. But she said that she watched the TV and hoped it wasn't going to be Tony
Loki or Losi or Loki.
Tony, that's it. She hoped it wasn't going to be another Carol Stewart. And I had no idea what she was talking about. But then she went in to explain that 4 years previously, this white woman in Boston called Carol Stewart had been murdered. So basically it was a carjacking gone wrong. And once, do you remember this? Yeah. Once her husband gave the description of the black man that carjacked them and killed Carol, there was just absolute bedlam. Like they arrested nearly every black man in Boston. They tore apart apartment blocks, you know, and I mean, not just, you know, not just interviewing people, but actually, you know, tearing up apartments, trashing places, and, you know, Tony was talking about how quickly it became racial, and, you know, just tearing through these communities.
It's funny because it reminded me of something happening in Northern Ireland, and I'm looking for a suspect amongst the Catholics.
Yeah.
You know, it's very similar sort of, you know, they just, once the guy mentioned it was a black guy, gave a brief description of him, they just locked everything down, pulling people out of their cars, as you said, like trashing apartments, just, you know, and like totally just, and obviously whatever way things were set up racially was, you know, anybody other than the white community would have thought, well, it's usually a black guy anyway, so they're well within the rights to do what they're doing. You know, no sense of like, well, what are the rights of these people? You know, they didn't have rights. You know. Yeah,
absolutely. And then they ended up arresting.
We should say this is 1995, isn't it? Like it's not.
Yeah, it's not that
long ago. This isn't like, you know, Rosa Parks. You know, this is very recent.
It's not that long ago at all. But they ended up arresting this guy, Willie Bennett, and then he was going to be, I can't remember, did he confess or did he claim his innocence? I'm not really sure, to be honest with you, and I don't think I looked into it, to be perfectly honest, but they were going to stick him for it until Carol Stewart's brother-in-law came forward and admitted that it was actually himself and the husband. The husband had done it and he'd helped cover it up. And they set it up because basically they knew how racist the cops were, and they knew they'd hear black and just go for it.
Yeah, and it worked almost. Except if the brother-in-law hadn't caved, there'd be another black man locked up just like that for killing an innocent white woman. And also, if that happens and he's locked up for, you know, a carjacking and killing a white woman, this black guy, it further enforces the racial stereotype, further divides the community, and you can see how all this feeds into what we now have in basically the cops lying about stuff has fed into the white people's distrust of the black community.
Yeah, this false narrative.
But it's all based on lies.
Yeah, absolutely. But I thought that was one of my favorite bits in the whole documentary, because again, that was another case I'd never heard of, but that's an infamous case over in America, the Carl Stewart case. It's funny then that it being such an infamous case, I don't know, maybe
they should have been. You feel like they should have been wary.
Yeah, but clued in or something.
And when that happened, you'd imagine certain steps would have been taken to make sure that didn't happen again, or that the Boston cops there should have been a clampdown. Like there should have been an investigation. They should have weeded out whatever was going on. Or at
the very least, a cloud over their word not being good. Basically. But yeah, that's kind of episode 2, I think, in a nutshell. And then at the end of it, what you mentioned there earlier was this woman coming forward, Rosa Sanchez, and basically she IDs Sean. She said that you said correctly, saw a black man stooping outside of Mulligan's SUV outside of the Walgreens. And then, the episode 2 kind of ends with her picking him out of a lineup. And again, I don't know if you remember, but it shows live footage of the lineup. I don't know why all this was recorded. That seemed really bizarre to me as well. But that there was.
I presume it was just something they started doing at that point.
It was just strange. Was it going to be on cops or something? But that they actually had footage of the lineup, and there's the lawyer arguing with the police in charge, telling him he wants him to move around the lineup because he believes it's rigged. I don't know if it was interesting. It's great to see. I mean, look, it's brilliant that they did record it. It's great for us to be able to see this in real life and not just a reenactment or whatever.
Just because you didn't like the animated reenactments.
I didn't. No, not at all. I didn't like the animated. I just thought they were jarring. I thought they were, but then you said that they were kind of reminiscent of the kind of R&B and hip hop and rap videos of the time.
Yeah, I thought they were like, I don't know, they remind me of hip hop sort of. There's an animator. I have a book somewhere. I can't see it now for the life of me. But also Gorillaz, the band Gorillaz, that kind of animation.
Very like Gorillaz. I'd agree with you there.
So I kind of liked the. I suppose it's funny. There was maybe because the opening music was American Irish, Dropkick Murphys, diddly eye but rock, but the music was and a lot of the music was kind of hip hop, 90s hip hop, and then the style of the animation was 90s hip hop, I thought as well. So there was kind of like it was even almost maybe a little bit of a clash between the styles of music chosen and graphics as well. But, I thought that I liked the style of the animation, to be honest with you, but I could see why it might it could jar, like, it's almost, you're dealing with a serious subject here, and there was something quite, I don't know, music video.
That's it. I think that's why I didn't like it. And like, even if I remember back to the first time I watched this documentary, it just go to show you as well how, I probably watch way too much true crime documentaries, but B, how like poor our attention spans become. I thought the first episode was very slow and I nearly didn't continue on with it. And like, I'm delighted that I did, but I've read other reviewers' opinions of Trial 4 and they all say the same thing, that episode 1 is very slow, and so much so that they nearly gave up on it. And I definitely found that at the time as well. And then, I didn't particularly like the animation. And then the music as well. I was just like, it was just a bit mishy-mashy for me. But it gets better as the production goes on. And in fairness to him, like, he's recording this over a series of years. Like, your skill set, your style, everything is going to evolve. It's very hard. I think in this documentary, you do see the evolution of his style throughout it. I think it's much more crisp and sharp, and the production qualities much more in keeping with Netflix style towards the last couple of episodes. They don't, do the animation so much or that kind of thing. The kind of I noticed in the last couple of episodes, instead of the animation, they do like, I suppose what you'd see in a courtroom, you know, those kind of, I'm not sure what the correct word is, that kind of 3D scale reenactment thing that they do. So it kind of comes up from the ground. Do you know what I'm talking about? And they'll kind of go, this was the trajectory to the wall, and they'll put in all the mathematics and all. They use that in the last couple of episodes instead of that kind of, they keep, when they're showing the shooting of Mulligan, they keep using that graphic over and over again. But they do use that.
I don't think I'd have stuck with it if you hadn't asked me to.
But and then it's a little cracker, like, as it goes on. It's just a little bit slow, like, to begin with. But then that episode, then episode 2, kind of ends with, it ends hanging on a question, as most episodes of true crime documentaries do. And the question is about these detectives, Sarah, Brazel, and Robinson. And these are the 3 guys who keep finding the evidence against Sean, who keep finding the people who are IDing Sean. As you correctly said, one of them is in a relationship with Rosa Sanchez, the girl who picks him out in the lineup.
Who's a key witness.
And a key witness, yeah. He's gone out with her aunt. I think it was a Sarah. Don't quote me on that, but I think it was a Sarah who was dating her. But yeah, that's kind of the question episode 2 ends on, is, you know, how come these 3 guys are the ones finding all the evidence? And not only that, but they're actually, like, this isn't their area.
That's not their area, yeah. They're a different...
They're drugs.
Almost. Yeah,
they're drugs. Yeah, they have nothing to do with homicide at all.
As the lady from the Boston Globe points out, like, they're in every picture. They're bringing them into court. Yeah. They're standing. They're everything. Everything is coming through them.
Yeah.
And she kind of explained how many cops are involved, or could be involved, or should be involved. You know, it's not even their department, and their hands are on everything. You know.
Yeah.
Obviously, straight away, like, you know, everybody must be turning a blind eye.
Yeah.
Like,
and then look, I know hindsight is 2020, and we're watching this, you know, looking back and kind of going, here, how could you not have known? But I guess as well, in not necessarily the police's defense, but maybe in the public at large's defense, we're a world of social media now where we have all this information at our fingertips. We can, you know, you've seen it in other documentaries like Don't Fuck with Cats. You can nearly be an armchair sleuth now. You can nearly solve a crime for the comfort of your own home without ever looking at the crime scene. But like, we're talking about a time when, you know, if you didn't hear it on the telly, on the radio, or see it in a newspaper, you didn't know about it. Like, and that was only if you watched them or read them. Whereas now we're getting all this information. So I guess nowadays this would seem like a much more straightforward case that you would imagine would be solved much quicker. But I guess
have we seen, has McAnally been introduced yet?
No,
the big Irish boss. He hasn't been introduced yet. Okay.
He hasn't been introduced yet. So like, but again, I feel like we can kind of fly through the next couple episodes, because it then goes to trial. So there's the first trial, which results in a mistrial. There's the second trial, which results in a mistrial. And then the third trial, which obviously results in his conviction. And what episode 3 and 4 are about are basically what changed between those trials. And they go into a little bit more with Rosa Sanchez and the aunt, and how, I don't know if you remember, Sanchez didn't initially ID him. Do you remember that? She ID'd another guy. They took his picture away, took her out of her room for a private chat down to their car. This is Sarah Robinson and the other guy. Bring her out outside of the station, and she comes back up to the lineup again, and this time IDs him magically. But yeah, it's insane. Like, it's just crazy.
But also there was a lot of question about whether it should have even gone to a third trial, and what, like, they were just, it reminded me of the Nice Treaty here in Ireland. They just
kept going till they got the result they wanted.
Kept coming back until they got the result they wanted, you know, which is blatant for everybody to see. And that's why I keep saying there's so many cover-ups, there's so many people turn a blind eye. There's so many obvious, like, why do they really want to convict this guy? There's, you know, come on, alarm bells, you know?
Yeah, 100%. And then as well, they talked to Tia, who was Sean's girlfriend at the time. And she had a kid, not Sean's kid, but she had her own kid. And basically she said that, you know, initially she was like, 100% Sean's innocent. There's no way he's done this. And then the police were harassing her daily. Like her house was surrounded. And then the DA at the time was super friendly and said, like, you know, Sean is a criminal. He did this. He's going to hurt you. You need to side with us so we can protect you. And then they fingerprinted her. Do you remember this? They fingerprinted her. And suddenly they found the gun that was implicated in the crime, and Mulligan's gun buried on this vacant lot, again by Sarah and Robinson. And her fingerprints that had been taken a day or two before this discovery were miraculously found on the gun. None of Sean's fingerprints were ever found on the gun, funnily enough, but her fingerprints were found on the gun.
And the implication was that he hid the gun in her house, or she hid it for him under a table or something like that. I was kind of a bit confused by all that, but yeah, she ended up being put in a position where she was implicated in the crime as well. And did she testify against him then?
She did testify against him because the DA, who, like I said, was friendly at first, came to her house then and point blank said to her, "We can take your child if you don't. You don't play ball."
Jesus.
And again, she was 17? I don't think she was 18. I think she was 16 or 17, like a baba.
But but they were threatening to take her child away unless you'd do anything.
Of course you would. Of course you would. You would at, me at 34, I would do that. Never mind at 16, 17.
But it just shows the balance of power,
100%.
I'm Devin.
And I'm Steph.
And we are the podcast from the crypt.
Join us every Friday as we discuss accounts of murder, mayhem, paranormal, and all things spooky.
Plus a dash of comedy to help soothe your soul during these chilling tales.
You can find us anywhere you listen to your favorite podcasts. Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, etc.
Also, you can find us at thepodcastfromthecrypt.buzzsprout.com, and you can choose from there how you'd like to listen.
You can find us on Instagram and Facebook, both at The Podcast from the Crypt.
Be sure to tune in and listen to us discuss what nightmares are made of. Let's get weird.
But look, as we said anyway, then the jury deliberate. I think they were hung after, they deliberated for like 8 days or something. It was something ridiculous anyway. They were hung and then it was declared a mistrial. Terry Patterson was found guilty and sentenced. Yeah. And then Sean's second trial began, and that was another mistrial. And they talked to a juror as well, female juror. They talked to her on screen and they asked her kind of why, in reflection now, looking back on the trial 20 odd years after the fact, why didn't you find him guilty? And she said that they all felt that something didn't add up, that there was something been withheld.
Catherine Hunt, was that her name?
By the police, I think so. You're great for the old names. We're going to have you back.
No, I just have the list with the pictures.
And then trial 3 obviously begins, and as opposed to, the 8-day deliberation that the previous trials had, this one had a 3-hour deliberation, and Sean's found guilty. And he's sentenced then to life with no chance of parole, which is, again, a really common thread you'll see in true crime documentaries as well. It always seems to be life with no chance of parole.
If you're struggling with alcohol or drugs, Recovery Centers of America can help. The holidays are over, the new year is here, and the time to act is now. Expert private care at Recovery Centers of America will get you on the road to recovery today. At our award-winning and fully accredited treatment centers on the Eastern Shore and in Southern Maryland, you will be treated with compassion, dignity, and respect by our dedicated team of professionals. You will also benefit from specialized programs, 24-hour medical care, and the comfort of our outstanding facilities. Let us help you. We will answer your call 24/7 and can get you into treatment as soon as today. If outpatient care is right for you, you can receive a same-day assessment and attend therapy in person or virtually. And because we accept most private insurance plans, you get premium care without the premium price. Don't wait. Start your new year. Start your new life today. Call 1-888-RECOVERY now. That's 1-888-RECOVERY.
Plan ahead this Valentine's Day with 1-800-Flowers.com. From first dibs on great deals to the best selection of Valentine's Day roses and guaranteed delivery. Don't wait to wow. Right now, 1-800-Flowers is offering 24 assorted roses for $39.99. Or upgrade to 24 red roses for $10 more. Get right to the romance this Valentine's and find the way to wow with 1-800-Flowers.com. To order, go to 1-800-Flowers.com/tune-in. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/tune-in.
And is this because they need this to not come back up again at the come out? They need this guy to go away, to stay away, and to never, like, you know, obviously if he was up for parole, he'd be able to sort of get an attorney and try and defend himself. It's Jesus.
With America as well, though, I think I had said to you in our production meeting as well. There's, I mean, they've monetized the criminal system over there, so it benefits them to always go for life with no parole, because then they have, in effect, you know, if not a slave in shackles in the deep south, a slave by another name in a justice system where they can't ever get out, and it's free labor, it's slave labor for life. So that's that's the long and the short of it. That's I think I was telling you before about the documentary 13th, which is about the 13th Amendment, and that's literally what it is. This amendment to the Constitution, which said slavery is illegal unless you're convicted of a crime. So that's the loophole that was put in there.
And the prisons in America are run by private companies.
Of course they are. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was an uproar there a couple of years ago when they found out that, you know, Victoria's Secret had all of their stuff made in American prisons, amongst others. I mean, they were just one of the more famous names.
But there's a very famous Irish shop that I won't name, that is owned by the same company that owned prisons in America.
That's right.
Which is very sad to see.
Yeah, it is. But if this documentary shows us anything, it shows us that, you know, we're not above.
We're not
a bit of scandal. No. So this is what we kind of jump into then, I suppose, in the next couple of episodes. I think one of the episodes of the documentary is actually called that, isn't it? It's like
the Irish.
Black Irish or something, isn't
Black
it?
Irish.
Black
Irish.
Yeah. And it's kind of twofold, because it's about, obviously, the dark side of the Irish immigrant cops, but it's also this new, is it DA she's going for? I think it's,
she's running for district attorney.
Yeah.
She's black. Her dad is Irish, I think.
Yeah. He's first or second generation, right?
Her mother's black. Yeah. She's a powerhouse.
She is. So it's kind of talking about the two of them. And then I suppose in the episodes leading up to that, they're talking about, obviously Sean is jailed. He's in there, and they're then talking about how he has to, there's this thing called Rule of 30. So in order to get a new lawyer, you have to fire your counsel for ineffectiveness. So it's something he becomes aware of while he's in jail, watching a show. He sees Rosemary talking about this guy she's representing in a very similar situation. So Rosemary being obviously his future counsel then. So he sees her on this TV show while he's in jail, and she's talking about this guy she's representing in a very similar type of story. And so Sean looks into how can he get her instead of the lawyers that he currently has. And the lawyers
they're David Duncan and Norman Zalkind, and they were really, I mean, you kind of look back on it at this stage and go, maybe they didn't do a great job, but they really tried to do a great job for him. They really were on his side, and he liked them.
And he was definitely torn about getting rid of them. Like he says that, like, it was the only option to get new counsel was to use this Rule of 30 and you had to fire your counsel for ineffectiveness. And look, it doesn't seem like they've held it against him, because I mean, they take part in the documentary and they speak in his favor. So it's they understand it was
a procedure. It was a procedure.
It was nothing personal. Yeah. Exactly. And then in that episode as well, they kind of talk about, then they give Rosemary's backstory, which she's from the projects herself, and then she was the only one in her family to graduate high school, to go to college, get an education. And so that she said, if she got an education, this is what she was going to do. She was only going to take on clients from similar backgrounds, And
we should at this point look at the fact that it's the women. So there's Rosemary, there's that lady who was running for DA, the Black Irish lady. And also, if you think about his friend, I don't know if we've met Elaine yet.
Oh, Elaine Murphy, his godma. You know what he calls her?
If we talk about Tony, the reporter, like, it's men. The women are the ones trying to do the right thing.
And I never thought of it like that at all, actually.
There's not one.
Yeah. Rachel Rawlings. Rachel Rawlings is the black woman running for DA. That's I knew it was Rachel, but I never actually. That's a very good point.
The men, apart from his defense attorneys, and a couple of journalists, like, it's all the women who are trying to get to the bottom of it and trying to solve it and try to do the right thing, and aren't, like, she as an attorney, she's not friends. Rosemary, she's not friends with the cops, where you'd find that in a city like Boston, you need to be friends with the cops, and these things are sort of all tied up. So it's the women that are showing the way here.
Yeah. There you go. This is what's great about getting another opinion. I never even actually thought of it like that, but I guess you're right. Actually, it's a fairly straight split, isn't it? It's all the cops are guys, and
but it's worth noting because women aren't as easily bought, or well, not in this case anyway.
Yeah, not in this case, definitely. But so that we're introduced to Rosemary, given her backstory, and basically, like, she, as you said earlier, she's kind of like, why you? And then she talks about meeting him, and she's saying, he's this lanky, tall, skinny, unassuming black kid with a stutter. And she said, I didn't see a criminal. I just didn't see, this is not a I think she said a cold-blooded killer or something to that effect. She was like,
she knew, no. She had a good gut instinct. And also around that time, one of the cops, I don't know if it was Edward McNally, about these attorneys, if she gets the conviction overturned, that's a big payday for her. So it plants a seed. You're like, oh, maybe she's just in this for the money, and she sees, I still wasn't, there was always moments where you go, oh, hang on a second, they throw in these things where you think maybe she's only in it for the money, maybe he's not innocent, maybe so they're quite clever that way as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's the measure of a really good true crime documentary, I suppose, is that every episode in the docuseries, it should end on a cliffhanger, or at least a very provoking question, because then it encourages that binge watching. So you're not going to leave it there. You're going to keep watching to the end, because you're like, shit, what happened? So that episode then ends on Rosemary kind of looking into Mulligan, and just briefly, just to see whether she's actually going to even take Sean's case. And just by barely scraping the surface, she believes that he's a dirty cop, because she finds out how they buried his finances. Do you remember that? So that's how this next episode then starts, is how literally, I think it was maybe the next day or the day after, so maybe 2 days after Mulligan's murder, there was a thing on the news in Boston whereby they kind of said that things look shady in regards to his finances, that he had these Corvettes. There was some other car that I'd never heard of, but apparently that was a luxury car as well. And he had like 8 luxury condos.
Properties.
Yes, suspiciously in his sister's name and valued at $1 each or something. So that's,
But he had taken a loan out to buy them, and he owed the money or something like that.
But she basically had that information within seconds of looking into this guy. So this is what determined, her opinion that she was going to take Sean's case. She was like, hang on now, this is looking very suspicious. How come this wasn't spoken about more in the media or brought to light? And then they're talking to Elaine Murphy. So Elaine was this lady that it's not something I've ever heard of. It's a Metco kind of, what would you call it? It's kind of not a fostering system, but whereby kids from disadvantaged areas got to go to school for a year or maybe all of their young lives in a better school. So they're shipped out, bused out to these better, predominantly white areas. So Sean was in this Metco program, and Elaine Murphy was the mother in his host family. So I think he lived with them for like a year or something, was it? I
think he was in school with her son, and they became really good friends. And
as part of the system. Yes. But she has since then, she was living in Boston at the time. She's since moved up to Canada somewhere. And then one day, out of the blue, this newspaper lands in her lap, and it's Sean on the front.
Just some friends called in, just happened to call in on that day, and they just left a newspaper on the worktop. Just like, when you think about it, like total coincidence, a zillion to one chance of it happening.
Yeah.
And she discovers he's in jail.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, even though she hadn't, I think he was like maybe 8, 9 when she had him as, when they were his host family, but she said it wasn't the Sean that she knew. And then, like you said, coincidentally, some twist of fate, she's this writer. So she starts writing about it as well, and doing articles about it, where she is in Canada. And she kind of gives a brief synopsis into Sean's childhood then as well. I don't know if you remember, about how his brother drowned, his older brother drowned, and then his mother became a crack addict, and then the father left.
And this is important because we, even like at the end of the day, Sean is innocent. Spoiler alert. But even if he was guilty, and this is the thing that we do all the time, is we don't look into the reasons the person ended up the way they did.
Mm-hmm.
And if you see this family, it's a black family, they have to survive so much more hardship than we do. Yeah. Like we don't have the empathy we should have towards these other people, because you would look at his mother and go, she's a crack addict,
Mm-hmm.
It's her fault. What do you expect? No wonder her son is in prison.
Mm-hmm.
There's no smoke without fire there. Sure, look, his mother's a crack addict.
Mm.
And then when you look into it and you realize that her son died, and her grief was so great that she ended up becoming addicted to drugs to try and get through life, because she probably would have at that point chosen to die.
Mm-hmm.
But she, if you, as a mother, you need to be around for your other kids, and that's why people self-medicate and become crack addicts. And it's very important that that's shown as well. That tragedy happened to that family. And, and even Sean talking about his brother that he still missed to this day, and he still visited, and still, it's so tragic. And it's to look at that family's life and how they were struggling just to live.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, it brings them back into that cycle then again, because he's coming from parents, that aren't educated. And then he himself, he says even, he's like, this happened, my brother drowned, my mother's on drugs, my father left. I graduated from high school. He said, I tried to find jobs, but nobody would hire people from his neighborhood. They'd see his address and that would just be an instant. And he said, so what can you do when you sell drugs? So you do fall into that lifestyle of, you've bills to pay, you have a family to support, father's gone, your mother's on drugs, she's not going to do it. He's got younger siblings. He has option. It's
actually, in a weird way, very responsible of him to start selling drugs.
It is.
To try and make some money, to pay the bills. And you can't blame him.
Yeah. Maybe not the job of choice, but how many 17, 18-year-olds have to go out after doing their Leaving Cert in Ireland and find jobs to support their younger siblings and their mom, not many. So like you said, we've seen as an admirable thing in many ways. At least he has
and also
wherewithal to.
Our view of the choice to sell drugs is totally different to their view of the choice to sell drugs. It's not. It's chalk and cheese. We see it as black and white. It's not the same for those guys, for people like that.
But so then we digress. But this is what happens when you start chatting about these true crime documentaries. Like
you can edit all this out.
No, this is brilliant. This is brilliant because this is what you want. You want your, breaking down the documentary and what it made you think and what it made you feel. And that's why I love documentaries. They're educational in nature, and I'm a sponge. I want to know everything. So nosy by nature. So Rosemary decides to take on this case. And like I said, she just learns that Mulligan is, just a bad egg. And that it seems like the police are hiding information that Mulligan, Sarah, Robinson, and Brazil were all corrupt, and that they were ripping off drug dealers. Remember this? They were literally beating up small-time drug dealers, taking their drugs and selling them on, and taking the money that they found on them and hanging on to it, or hanging on to the majority of it at least, depending on the amount they were seizing. So, not to arouse suspicion, they'd hand in so much of it. But Jesus, I don't know how much money they said they made over the couple of years they were basically hoodwinking the system. They were running this
a lot of money.
They earned a lot. Well, they must have, if you had 8 luxury condos and 2, high spec cars.
Well, the worst thing about it was he was in debt. He wasn't even a good fucking, I was embarrassed to be Irish, looking at this guy. He was a bent cop. He was a bent cop. He'd invested in flats that he couldn't afford, and he was driving flash cars and working at night as security for Walgreens, because that's what he was doing outside. He was like nighttime security. So he was double jobbing, and he was still in debt. I was embarrassed to be Irish.
And then they were saying as well, actually, he was throwing in these overtime slips for court dates.
Yes.
Did you see that?
Yes.
So basically
on top of that.
Christ almighty, I don't know how he wouldn't be off working as a cop in Boston.
He should have been retired.
The way it ran at the time, I don't know if it still does now that they realized there was this massive loophole, but they were saying at the time the way it ran was that whether you were in court for 10 minutes or 4 hours, you were paid for 4 hours. And so what he would do, he being Mulligan, would be on his day off, he'd just hop around from courtroom to courtroom. He'd show up with coffees for whatever cops were on duty, stay there for the 10 minutes so that he could get paid for the 4 hours, then drive, half a mile or a mile down the road to the next courthouse and do the very same thing. They said he actually put in so much overtime for these court cases. Half of them didn't exist. And there was more dates that he put in for overtime on than court sessions that actually took place.
Yeah, there wasn't enough hours in the week for all the hours he did.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, exactly. There was,
and he was still in debt.
And he was still in debt.
This is a stupid man.
This is a stupid man, definitely.
When you look at a cop system, they should be looking to weed out these stupid cops, not put black people in prison. But anyway.
Absolutely. But then it kind of gives, I suppose. This is one of the times I did like the graphics in this documentary, actually. They do a kind of a fast forward, it's either a montage or it's this, and I like the way they've done it. So it's quite often hard in a documentary to show the passage of time without making it look cheesy, without like sun coming up, sun goes down, the ticking of clocks, that kind of stuff. So what they do instead is they do this very simple black screen, and I don't know if you remember, this line keeps popping up with text on it. And then that'll stay up for a couple of seconds, and then the next line. So it first says something like, she starts working on the case, her being Rosemary, in I think 2012. And first thing she does is make a records request. And then it says a year later it's denied. And then she makes another request, and it's like 17 months later, they request that she pays them, I think it's like $3,500 to have these records. She cuts the check within 5 days. A year later, it's denied. So straight away, there's a year, 17 months, and a year. Like, that's the bones of 4 years, 3.5, 4 years straight away. And she's actually his lawyer for the bones of 10 years before she just gets the records requests that was the first thing she did when she took on his case in 2000 and, whatever. She makes this request and it's 10 years before she gets them. Like, it's insane.
Yeah, I mean, like, don't get locked up if you're innocent in the first place, because it'll take you a hell of a long time to get out of there, and because of bureaucracy and because of paperwork and because, the system is slow by design, but also people, there's reasons why they don't want to be, they don't want to help you, because it's going, like, I mean, Mulligan is a bad cop and, his friends are bad cops, but this is definitely systematic. This is definitely all the way up and down, to the district attorney, as we probably, as I feel like we found out.
Yeah, I'd say as well, it's the, I don't know, whoever's in charge of the record requests being released. I mean, it's a matter of all the cops being in cahoots with each other as well, and they're
totally,
probably golfing on the weekend and working together for the last 30 years, and there's nobody going to rat anyone out. There's this, you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours.
It's the ultimate mafia, the cops,
Yeah. So finally, she gets the record requests. I think they're it's for Sarah and Brazil. And it's about this Robert Martin case, which I'm not going to go into too much detail, but it's basically where he's a small-time drug dealer and he's held captive in his car by Mulligan. Do you remember that? While Sarah and Brazil ransack his flat, take his drugs, take his money, and that's not handed in. So she finds this. So obviously, this is the reason they've been withholding these record requests for the last 10 years, because they knew if she got her hands on this is the missing key. This is evidence that this wasn't a one-off for Mulligan. He's done this before. So they are granted a new hearing based on this. And then I mentioned this earlier, that this is when we see Rosemary then attacking your man on the stand, Mr. Homicide. Do you remember this? She tears him a new one. She actually goes for the jugular here. He's, he keeps referring to Sean as Mulligan's murderer, and she just takes him to town. Like, she absolutely.
Yeah, that guy was an asshole.
He was a real asshole. Yeah,
that's all I can remember from that. He was slimy. He was an asshole. He didn't tell the truth.
But look, the fact even that he's given himself the nickname Mr. Homicide says it all. Really, he's so cocky in his ability to solve homicides that he, gives himself this nickname.
But also, he doesn't care. He does not care that there's another human being, because we keep referring to Sean as a black person, but he does not care that there's another human being in prison, innocent, and this guy is innocent. He does not care. He doesn't even see him as a human. He's just like, I'm just covering my own ass. I don't care. I actually don't, like, he literally did not care. There was no sense of remorse. You'd imagine with most people at that point to be going, fuck, look, this is bad. Like, I've been involved with some bad stuff. We really want to see this guy, at some point.
Yeah. And I think Rosemary says that. She's like, how do these people sleep at night? How do they know, knowing that an innocent man is in jail? Because they know he's innocent. And how she knows that they know that he's innocent is because they clearly framed him to, I think she calls it, she uses an analogy. I can't remember what she calls it, something to do with a lid. But basically what she means is that they just wanted to put a lid on this case, solve it, and get Sean behind bars as quickly as possible, so that they didn't look into Mulligan's finances, because if they did, they would see that the whole lot of them were dirty. And that's why those three, even though the fact that they were drugs cops, they were on this homicide case, they wanted to make sure it was solved quickly, so that nobody would go looking and find them as well. Mulligan was dead, nothing could be done. They were still alive, they could all be still hung for this. So
but do we know at this stage that they had already been done for being corrupt? Yeah. So this is then it shows the footage of the trial, and it shows the DA disclosing documents mid-trial, basically. Do you remember that? And Rosemary just loses it, and it's a female judge, and the female judge is like, "Sir, this does not look good for the Commonwealth." Like, you're giving her 500 pages 10 minutes before you're going to use them as evidence to your benefit. So they, again, have to, kind of go on a break from the case, and to give her a chance to, glance over the 500 pages. And in this, there's an anti-corruption file
on Mulligan and Robinson. So basically the anti-corruption department had been looking into them about robbing drug dealers. And it's a single piece of paper. And
there was a whole file on them.
Yeah, that was never followed up on. That's it. It was just that one initial, taking the evidence from the guy that they robbed, and nothing was ever done about it then. And then, really interestingly, what's found then as well is that single piece of paper where a guy comes forward. He's a cop in another town, I think. But his father is a detective, Armstead, in Boston. And he reports that a week before Mulligan was murdered, his father found out that Mulligan, and we would find out through the course of the documentary, this guy has a penchant for prostitutes. He's a penchant for underage prostitutes, particularly. Well, you can't call them prostitutes, can you? Underage victims of,
girls,
sex trafficking, but they're addicts. And so because he's robbing these drug dealers of their cocaine, he's then hanging on to it to curry favor with these,
he's giving
kids.
Free drugs to, he's a paedophile giving free drugs.
He's a paedophile, exactly. So this detective, Armstead, gets wind of the fact that Mulligan is messing around with his 13-year-old daughter.
If you're struggling with alcohol or drugs, Recovery Centers of America can help. The holidays are over, the new year is here, and the time to act is now. Expert private care at Recovery Centers of America will get you on the road to recovery today. At our award-winning and fully accredited treatment centers on the Eastern Shore and in Southern Maryland, you will be treated with compassion, dignity, and respect by our dedicated team of professionals. You will also benefit from specialized programs, 24-hour medical care, and the comfort of our outstanding facilities. Let us help you. We will answer your call 24/7 and can get you into treatment as soon as today. If outpatient care is right for you, you can receive a same-day assessment and attend therapy in person or virtually. And because we accept most private insurance plans, you get premium care without the premium price. Don't wait. Start your new year. Start your new life today. Call 1-888-RECOVERY now. That's 1-888-RECOVERY.
Every year, we say we'll wake up earlier, exercise more, really rest, and eat healthier. It's hard for us, but for dogs, not so much. Dogs are up at dawn, run for fun, sleep like champs, and they love eating fresh, healthy food every single meal. Give your dog another healthy habit. Real fresh food from the Farmer's Dog. Get 50% off your first box at thefarmersdog.com/listen.
And says that he knows where he does his detail outside of Walgreens and that he's going to be found shot between the eyes. And then lo and behold, a week later he is. So they find this guy coming forward going, this is what my dad has told me. And this statement was taken by this guy, Mr. Homicide. And this is the scene I'm talking about, Rosemary then tearing him a new one going, are you telling me you didn't think that this could allude to Sean's innocence, or not even, if you don't care about his innocence, it could allude to the fact that, this is cold hard evidence.
It's another investigation.
Yeah.
There could be, there's another suspect at least,
Which is, and then that episode just kind of ends with a graphic on the screen then saying that, Detective Armstead refused to comment, and that seems to be where they've left that. I guess maybe they can't say a whole lot more about it. Without leaving themselves open for liable. But again, I don't want to say a whole lot about it either, because I don't want to leave myself open for liable.
Don't.
But it alludes to the fact that maybe that's worth investigating, certainly. And it's probably the closest that the documentary comes to a satisfactory conclusion. Would that be a fair?
Yeah, and it would have been a lot easier and taken a lot less time for the justice system in America to find the actual suspect and lock him up, but there was too much shit to be covered up by the cops.
Absolutely. So look, I mean, Sean is granted bail as a result then of that hearing. He gets out. He's then working in this program called Community Heals. He's living with the minister of his mother's church. He's doing kind of TV interviews. He's studying his own case files as well, and getting a kind of a very quick education in law. He's, it shows scenes of himself and Rosemary sitting down, and she's kind of going, this is what we need to do. And then he's interjecting with very valid points. She's nearly teaching him on the job as they go.
Yeah, but it's brilliant because she's like, I need you to step up here.
Yeah.
We're going to need you to be involved. He's getting involved. He's educating himself.
You're dead right, actually. She does say that. Yeah, she does. She kind of says, I need you on board. Like, I need your help. Yeah.
You're part of the team,
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to help us prove your own innocence. Like he very much felt part of, he wasn't a bystander. He wasn't waiting. He was in control, which I thought was brilliant from her because.
Yeah, I wonder how often realistically that happens. Like, that's quite unusual, actually, when you think about it, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, like, I suppose normally you've no control. You're hoping that the other person, does the right thing by it. But he was right in the middle of it. She was happy for him to be. She wanted him in the middle of it. He was very clearly an educated or an intelligent guy, and knew his shit, and was interested, and obviously interested because he wanted to prove his own innocence. So that was very nice to see that as well.
Yeah.
And just to show the other side of Boston, there was a very powerful, wealthy white woman. More than happy to work side by side with this black person from the wrong side of the tracks, as it were.
Yeah, absolutely. And then
the women leading the way again.
The women leading the way again. Yeah. Like I said, I'm kind of disappointed I didn't cop that, actually. Yeah, you're dead on there. But it then kind of jumps forward. I mean, that whole episode then is just about that, really. They go into this thing, it's neither here nor there really, about this one-eyed Mr. C. So they're talking to this, again, a trafficked child who was a drug addict, but that Mulligan would give her money for drugs in exchange for sex and sexual favors. And she talks about, like, he was quite violent.
This is the blonde lady, wasn't it?
This is the blonde lady that they're talking to in her apartment.
She had a pimp, didn't she?
She did. And then there was this guy, basically the night that Mulligan was murdered, because do you remember in the first episode, there's something about the fact that there was rumors that he was found with his pants around his ankles, but that was all cleaned up before, they took the crime scene pictures and that. But she says the night he was murdered, she was cooking coke, and that she couldn't go down to him. So he was in the car outside Walgreens and was looking for her services, per se.
Yes, some company.
Some company. So she didn't go down because she was cooking coke, but she said that she would send down a girl called Bunny. And Bunny went down with this guy called One-Eyed Mr. C. And that Bunny told this Misty was this blonde-haired lady's name, actually. Bunny told Misty that One-Eyed Mr. C shot Mulligan. So here's another potential alternative. Suspect. Yeah. And then it says that One-Eyed Mr. C was murdered in 2005. So, I mean, that line of inquiry just ends with that, really. And then Misty says that, like, she told all of this to the police.
Yeah. The cops knew all this.
There was no evidence. There was nothing. There was no transcript of her interviews, nothing. And she didn't just do it once. Like, they interviewed her, I think, 4 times. I could be plucking that number from nowhere now, but I'm nearly certain it was 4 times she was interviewed. And there was nothing. There was no notes, no nothing. But then, so look, the final episode, like we said we weren't going to go through all those episodes. But anyway,
well, sure,
the final episode then, before the penultimate episode, is where we're kind of introduced to this Rachel Rawlings, who's going for the new DA. And seems to be the underdog as well, because I don't know if you remember at the start of that episode, she's not, there's the 2 favorites. There's the guy who's endorsed by the police department, and then there's the white lady.
Yeah.
I think it's even Rosemary who says if one of those 2 doesn't win, she'll be very surprised.
But she seemed to rally the black community in Boston, which, in America, we know that the black community don't vote because they don't think it's their political system, so they don't get involved. So she seemed to get voters that wouldn't normally go out and vote and rallied, the people. But also it does bear mentioning, I mean, obviously the white guy who was being supported was endorsed by the outgoing attorney and the cops, and he was their great white hope. he was going to continue. You know, he was, you know, he was going to continue things the way they were.
The corruption, the cover-ups.
Corruption. Yeah, everything was just going to
scratching each other's backs. The old boys club, like, yeah.
I'm worried now about you presume that he might continue to do things the way they were being done.
Yeah.
Maybe he would have changed things. But the white woman who was running, who was one of the favorites, she was saying a lot of things that were very much about changing the system and talking about corruption and talking about, I think she talked about the Sean Ellis case at one point as well. Maybe I'm wrong, but she was very much it seemed to me like even if she got in, she would have done a lot for the Black community and made a lot of changes. So there's another woman for your list of women that we're trying to change.
The ever expanding, growing list of women. Yeah. But so Rachel gets in then, and she's the first Black female district attorney in Boston at that time. But,
and she's Irish, which we should say.
And she's, her dad's Irish. So Rawlings. Where's that from?
Rawlings, I don't know. Could be, she could be Protestant Irish.
Rawlings of Roscommon.
Well, the only other Rawlings I know is Rawlings, but Henry Rollins, who's a singer.
Yeah.
But because obviously Mulligan is an Irish, corrupt to the bone, stupid as well. Let's just not forget that.
Yeah.
And a total narcissist, an idiot, an embarrassment to the Irish people. And thankfully, we have this Rachel lady coming along to redeem
us.
The good name. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. In that episode as well, there's like I said, it's the penultimate episode, so it's kind of wrapping everything up. It really focuses on Rachel's election. I mean, the run up to and the election. And I think the first time I watched the documentary, I was kind of like, why is this here? But having watched it a couple of times now, it's probably one of my favorite episodes in the series. It kind of just
because it's worth.
Go on.
It's worth mentioning that the DA in situ, like he was leaving early, but he was doubling down on what the cops were saying about Sean Ellis. He was going, no, this guy is. He was saying publicly, no, this guy's a murderer. He killed him. He was not for moving on that subject. Suddenly, shit starts coming to light. He suddenly decides he's leaving the post early. Doesn't want to be around when the shit hits the fan, it seems.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important who gets in next and who, because decide not to have the fourth trial, basically. Am I right?
Yeah. No, you're dead right. And like, this is the episode as well.
I've just skipped ahead.
No, you're right. No. This is the episode as well where that Rosemary discovers that, again, a minor thing, they kind of gloss over it. But I thought it was interesting was that this reward money that was put up in the initial, do you remember this? The reward money that was put up in the initial investigation, it was put up by the Boston Police Union. But she has to fight tooth and nail to get that information. Like, that is very deep. Nobody is saying, she just kind of, and I mean, it's something that the ordinary person mightn't even think. And you know what I mean? Like, you're trying to prove Sean's innocence, but you might never think to look at, hang on now, who actually offered that reward? Because it was just this kind of anonymous reward money that was put up initially with the investigation, the initial one back in 92 or 93. And then, she goes digging like she does and finds that it's the union, the Boston Police Union themselves that put up. And what I liked about that episode as well is it's the episode where Sean starts working with the Innocence Project. So,
oh yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's they've obviously now had their own Netflix series as well, and that is people, Sean and so many like him that have these wrongful convictions, and I don't think we're doing any spoilers by saying wrongful conviction. I mean, I think after the first 2 episodes, it's quite obvious that this guy is, like you said, they do throw the curveball in here and there, but it's just that,
but, it's pretty
it's pretty obvious that he is innocent and that he's been set up. And yeah, Rachel is then voted in as the first Black DA. And then, as you rightly said, your man very rushedly announces this press conference. Something about the trial. Remember this? And they're literally letting know, what is it, an hour before the press conference? Is it even?
Yeah. I think Sean is in work. Rosemary rings him and said, look, we're about to do an announcement. We don't know what it is. They won't tell me what it is. She's ringing. She's like, I don't know what it is. And then Sean has to leave work, and someone drives him over to Rosemary's office. They don't even know what's been announced. It's so cloak and dagger.
Yeah.
But there is a press conference.
And even he reassures Rosemary, you will find out, I'll tell you before anyone else knows, and it's just bullshit. They don't, but look, thankfully, and, luckily, I suppose, not even luckily, but satisfactory for the documentary maker.
Sort of satisfactory. I wasn't satisfied.
I wasn't satisfied, but I often think with these, documentary makers, you're taking such a risk because you never know what way the case is going to go. And you can't really release a documentary without some level of satisfaction to the audience, because if it just gets slated, people don't they want everything tied up in a nice little bow at the end. They want the good guy to prevail. They want, that's from fairy tales that we've been told since we were kids. We want a satisfying ending. So you're always taking a big risk taking on a documentary and following it in real time, like a case like this. But the case is dismissed against Sean. He doesn't get exonerated though. So I know what you're saying. He doesn't get exonerated. Yeah.
You want him to take them to trial and to prove his innocence.
I have a theory about this though.
Okay.
And I'm going to bore you with said theory. But my theory about this is that if you look back at the previous famous cases of wrongful conviction, so, Making a Murder, Stephen Avery, the Central Park 5, they were all exonerated and they all got hefty payouts as a result, because if you're exonerated, you're innocent, and then you can file a counterclaim for, you've ruined my life, you put me away for whatever, 20, 25, 30 years. And I have noticed this change in the last couple of years, whereby people are getting their cases dismissed, or in the case of the documentary you referenced, The Staircase, he went for an Alford plea. An Alford plea is whereby you're saying, I'm not guilty, but I don't want to stay in jail anymore. So you don't end up with a clean criminal record, but you do get released. But there's a lot more of this going on. They're obviously pushing back on the exonerations because it's costing them an arm and a leg. They're paying out millions to these, and there's so many of them. This is the thing, I suppose, that they're probably shitting it. They're probably like, fuck, there's Stephen Avery and the Central Park 5, and they're after getting millions between them.
Oh, I would imagine that there's a statewide, countrywide, there's word has gone out. We can't be paying out anymore. Like keep these guys in prison, because it comes down to money. Everything comes down to money.
So there's a lot of cases being dismissed, and not as many exonerations in the last number of years, I have noticed, and noticed as well since all of these true crime documentaries become so popular. They've had their renaissance now in the last kind of 8 to 10 years. Because, largely in part because of Netflix, and it's streaming into your front room now, and people are, like I said, armchair sleuths and
social media, and people are kind of everyone's an expert then,
absolutely. So, to the end of this documentary, unfortunately, the DA, the outgoing DA and police still maintain it was him, but basically they say too much time has passed to prove it. And Rosemary, it kind of the closing shot on this documentary then is Rosemary saying that, she believes the case was dropped before the new DA came in, because she would expose the depth of the corruption, if there was an open case there. So they wanted to shut it before Rachel Rawlings comes in, because they were like, shit, this one is whiter than white. She gets a sniff of anything corrupt, she's going to take us to task. And she probably would have. And so they were able to shut it all down in one fell swoop. And, you know, they only were down one man. They were only down Sean, as opposed to the whole lot of them being torn down, I suppose. So that's it. That's pretty much how, you know, Rosemary then kind of discusses whether they should take a case against the Boston police. Like I said, you know, they weigh up the pros and the cons, and she kind of says she'd love Sean to be declared innocent and get restitution. However, she just knows the Boston police, and she knows they have the power, if they want, to put him back behind bars and start this whole process again.
But also there's kind of, and this is always the worry, that it's the unseen stuff, like, you know, you won't be able to drive anywhere without getting stopped by the cops, getting parking tickets, getting, you know, you'd be, you know, harassment. All sorts, you know, harassment, your life would be ruined. It's not worth it. And that's the sad truth. And that happens all the time as well. So
yeah, absolutely.
You know, something to be aware of. But yeah.
Well, what have you learned, Keith? What have you learned, or what surprised you with your foray into true crime?
The Irish built America badly in some cases. We're not always good, and we should be very careful. We should be very careful, especially in Ireland, because, you know, there is a sort of a nasty racist edge to some of what you see in Ireland at the moment, especially on social media, and we need to be very careful about where that's coming from. And you have to understand that where racism comes from, and class divide comes from, and who it suits, and you have to follow the money every time. And you know, if it seemed in this case it was in white people's and the cops and the system's interest to have a scapegoat like the Black community, and to make white people afraid of the Black community, because if they ever needed someone to, you know, if they ever needed a suspect to send to prison, they could just pick up a Black person and nobody would question it.
Yeah.
And that's why racism exists. Racism is not me not liking a Black person. It's us being told for generations that Black people are bad by a system that wants you to think Black people are bad. And it wasn't Black people, it'd be another race, because the system always needs scapegoats. And that's, look, not that I learned that, but it's very much in evidence here. And that's what we should learn from this, you know?
Yeah, 100%. I checked out the ratings this one got online. Like I said, I read a few reviews that it got as well. Predominantly favorable. It got 7.3 on IMDb. I got 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, but to be fair, that was only, I think, 10 or 11 ratings. But this, it hasn't been the runaway success of, say, Making a Murder, or say The Staircase, or whatever. And I mean, I think we're both in agreement. It's a little belter. It's a cracker of a documentary. Why do you think that is? Why do you think it hasn't been the blowout success?
I think it's hard to get past the first episode, and it's confusing in places. I think it's not. I mean, like The Staircase was confusing, but in a good way.
In a good way.
Pointedly confusing. The Central Park 5. I don't know. I think maybe the first episode was hard to get past, and in parts it was confusing. I think. And obviously, I mean, I'm not the director, or I'm not a director, but I wonder if they had focused on the Irish side of things rather than, I think they could have made more of it. I think they could have named it something else. They could have named it Black Irish.
Yeah. We did both say that from the get-go anyway. We didn't think, you know, and I mean, really, like in anything, the title needs to hook. That needs to be the hook. You know, that you go, shit, what the hell is that about? Like, it's very elusive. It doesn't really give a whole lot away. I think personally as well, and I've touched on this on other episodes of What's Up Doc, and my regular listeners will know this, that again harken back to the lack of, you know, focus we have. Just our attention spans have become so short. This is 8 parts. That is considered quite long nowadays. Like back in, you know, The Staircase, Making a Murderer, The Keepers even, they would have been the first wave of this kind of new renaissance that true crime is seeing on Netflix. And they would have been all 13 episodes long. And I mean, if you try and watch them now, they're painful to try and get through. They're just so long and so drawn out, which is terrible. It's terrible because this is someone's life. We're trying to watch the trial and the times and, you know, get all the information. But it seems very long-winded now. They've kind of cut most of their work nowadays down to between 3 and 6 episodes. I do feel like 8 is a bit of a stretch. Having said that, look, you know, what bit or what episode could you pull out there?
Yeah.
If I had to throw out an idea, I'd say maybe that whole thing with the one-eyed Mr. C, that never went anywhere. Did it need to be in the, you know what I mean? Maybe they needed to put that in for balance because they're after mentioning this cop and they couldn't just be seen to throw out one potential. I don't know. Maybe that's why.
Or they had decided it was going to be 8 episodes and they needed to put that in there. But I wonder if that wasn't to their detriment because, like I said, people's attention spans, they just, you know, we're not really built for 8 episodes anymore because with so much information coming to us so fast. It's sad to say, but it's the truth. And like I said, most of the true crime documentaries are like, you know, ones of old 13 episodes. They've now cut all the way down to between 3 and 6. So I wonder if the fact that it's closer to that kind of longer style format, older style, was that maybe where they lost people as well because people just weren't willing to stick with them for 8 episodes. Or the other thing I think, and again, it's awful because it's on us, it's not on anything to do with the storytelling, is the kind of genre of wrongful convictions. Is it oversaturated now? I mean, there's a lot of that kind of thing out there at the moment. I would have thought that this would have done better. You know, I really did. Particularly the year it was released in. It's so timely with, you know, Black Lives Matter and all. You know, it's and I'd love to see them just do one on Boston cops around that time.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Just
absolutely.
that, you know.
Would you recommend it? Would you recommend it to a friend?
Yeah, totally. But I would say, look, you need to stick with it, but it's worth sticking with. And you know, there'll be times where you'll drift, but you know, I would say definitely watch it, but stick with it. You know.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you on that one. It's probably a bit more of a slow burner, but then, I mean, like we said, the case goes on over 22 years. How do you break that down into 3 episodes, 6 episodes? How do you even break it down into 8 episodes? Like, I feel sorry for the editor. Editing is not my forte anyway, so my sympathies definitely lie with the editor. But I think overall they did an excellent job. I think it was a cracker. I would recommend it. I don't really rate things. I don't say out of 10. I'd say watch it. It's a nice, easy one to watch in terms of an education as well into just the corruption, like you said, in Boston, in America at large, and maybe an understanding as well of where our inherent racism comes from as well.
Yeah, and I think I would recommend you watch it for that alone. You know, but unfortunately on a podcast like this, you're probably preaching to the converted. Whereas, you know, you'd like this to be shown in schools, or you know, that would be great. You know, but look, it
is what it is.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. Keith, thanks a million for joining us today.
No problem at all. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of What's Up Doc, the true crime documentary podcast. If you'd like to show your support for the show, make sure to head on over to Apple Podcasts where you can rate us, you can give us a review, and you can subscribe as well. We'll see you next time, guys. Good luck. Good night. God bless.
You coming to bed, hon?
Yep, honey, I'll be right there. Just got to turn out the light. Ow! 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 Ah! Ah!
Some things never change. Like your kids always leaving tiny toys on the floor for you to step on. And Geico saving folks lots of money on their car insurance.
Sweetie, I think I left the downstairs light on.
Please don't make me go.
15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
If you love to be remembered as the person who gives the best birthday gifts, I'm here to tell you that 1-800-Flowers.com is your ultimate birthday gifting destination. 1-800-Flowers has thoughtful and artfully created options that are guaranteed to deliver the best birthday surprise. Shop thousands of unique gifts at 1-800-Flowers.com for exclusive offers and great values. To order today, visit 1-800-Flowers.com/tune in. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/tune in.